What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by my good friend Tom. Tom, how are you today, brother?
Doing good. Good to see you, Keith, as always. Technical difficulties. If you've been following me on Twitter, you've seen that we had initial start time of 10:30. Technical difficulties, had to push that back to 10:40. And then we kind of threw in the towel a little bit, said, screw it, let's run it anyway. So now we're coming to you live at 10:34 a.m. Sunday, July 15th, the day
January.
after. All right. Either way, some J month. Early in the year. It's cold outside.
I wish it was July. That would be great.
I don't know what's wrong with me. Why I said June then July. I don't know. January 15th, UFC Vegas 15. UFC Vegas 67 just went down last night. I think it was. It was the card where we had Sean Strickland step in on short notice, 3 days notice, come in and get the win over Nassourdine Imavov. He looked fantastic, got back to his vicious style of fighting, but that was all superseded by the largest announcement that came out by accident prior to the fight even starting, any fights even starting for that matter. Francis Ngannou is basically gone from the UFC, free to sign wherever he wants. Dana White confirmed it in the press conference. And we have at UFC 285, if I can get any title correct, UFC Vegas 285, we have Jon Jones taking on Ciryl Gane for the UFC Heavyweight Championship, the first one in a while. Keith, what are your thoughts on that? There's a lot going on here. Jon Jones is back. He's going to be in Vegas, which has historically been not great for him personally. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so yeah, UFC 285, right? I think that's what it is.
I hope so. I can't afford to get another thing wrong.
Yeah, Francis Ngannou isn't basically gone. He's gone. They waived their right to match, any sort of contract that comes at him next. He's gone. He's no longer with the UFC. He's been spotted at family events where like his mom and aunts are wearing PFL t-shirts.
Right.
It's a bit crazy to begin with, considering he was not signed to the PFL. So, that's one way for your family to be like, hey, here's where he's going next without outwardly saying it. But, he's gone. Jon Jones, the villain, is back against, the ultimate good guy in the UFC too, in Ciryl Gane, which is nuts because, Ciryl Gane just came in here as the face, and Jon Jones has like always been the heel of the light heavyweight division. Stipe's out of the picture, which is crazy too. I guess my prediction is Jon Jones beats Ciryl Gane, and then Stipe comes in and Stipe beats Jon Jones. But
interesting. On the same wavelength as you. I think, obviously we got the Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane. We saw Ciryl Gane have some grappling woes, to say the least, against Francis Ngannou, who's not known for his grappling ability. But here's the thing. Ciryl Gane is still young in his UFC MMA career, still kind of learning some different aspects of mixed martial arts. So interested to see how he comes out and how he looks against Jon. But initially, Jon Jones is going to have the advantage in the grappling. There's no way that Ciryl Gane is going to match that level, even to a 2 years off at a 60-pound heavier Jon Jones. I don't see there being too much pushback from Ciryl Gane on the ground. I think maybe he'll do well, maybe better than you think in the first initial, but it's a 5-round fight for at 25 minutes in the cage there with probably one of the best mixed martial artists to ever do it, regardless of weight class. I think Ciryl Gane's going to have an issue there, but what I'm a little concerned about for Jon Jones then would be Ciryl Gane and those low calf kicks. It's something that we've seen Ciryl do a lot, try to beat up the legs, and we know legs are not the strongest part of Jon Jones. They're probably the weakest part. Not going into anything personally with his family. If we're talking about weaknesses for Jon Jones, cocaine is what I'm really alluding to. I think cocaine is his biggest weakness, and then his shins.
Well, you got domestic abuse.
That's in there too. But with Dana White, and it seems like that unfortunately just gets shoved under the rug. Brett Okamoto asked Dana White yesterday, like, hey, like some people, you're back, you're doing this. Some people think there should be punishments for you. And Dana said, like, well, I'm punished in my personal life. What else matters? Like, this is great, but I was going to leave during the acquisition in 2016. I was potentially not going to put on fights during the pandemic and leave there too. So like, I like doing this. It's fun. I enjoy it, but I don't have to do it. The only thing that matters is my personal life, and that's where I'm suffering, which not that answer, right? It deflects.
Show though, that's been his policy with Jon Jones with everything over the past like decade or so.
But hasn't he also said things that like, you can't do that, and like also kind of went on the other side and tried to take more strict punishments for domestic violence incidents?
I can't really think of any.
I feel like he had. I feel like sometimes Dana, depending on the situation, depending on the fighter,
because they signed Greg Hardy to the UFC.
Right, that's what it was, and he put it on a card with I think it was, I don't know. There was a female fighter on that card who had just gotten out of a domestic had a domestic violence situation against her, and it was actually a really, really bad one. Not that some of them aren't bad, but it was a really bad one, and putting her on the same card, being in the same building with Greg Hardy, showed a little bit of not a little bit, but a decent bit of the kind of tastelessness that sometimes can go on in the name of putting on maybe a fun event or ultimately making money. So it makes sense that Dana's going to flip-flop, I guess.
I don't think he's flip-flopped at all. I think he's just been very like his policy is basically like, well, if you're branded as a domestic abuser, that's going to hurt you for the rest of your life in the public eye. But not when it comes to the UFC. You're going to continue making money here, and you could have a contract and, sign for more fights. And because Jon Jones, to get off this topic a little bit, Jon Jones did just sign an 8-fight deal with the UFC, and which is crazy because, you have Francis, who was he had the opportunity to sign a contract to make more money than Brock Lesnar ever did. And Brock Lesnar being the highest paid heavyweight in UFC history, I believe.
And I looked that up. Brock Lesnar, I don't know how accurate this is, but it said Brock Lesnar during his time with the UFC made around $4 million. Honestly, to be the highest paid heavyweight, I would want to know what that means. He's saying he would be the highest heavyweight ever paid. How much is that really? Is that a lot of money? You know what I mean?
That includes pay-per-view points.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Brock Lesnar ended up cashing out $4 million, I just don't understand. I think saying that is too general to give us an idea of how good that offer was. Like, yeah, I would have made him the highest paid gas station attendant of all time. Okay, but that still is maybe $100,000. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, I think just saying he would have been the highest paid heavyweight of all time. Historically, heavyweights have not been paid the best. So I think that's a little bit of sleight of hand from Dana White there, maybe making the deal sound better than it was. And then also in that same press conference, and I'll pass it back to you. Sorry for talking so much. In that same press conference, he had said, like, Francis basically just doesn't want to compete at this level anymore. So that's, I think, another like twist he's doing to the whole thing.
I sort of believe that when he was saying that yesterday. And yeah, that's also Dana White's way of saying, like, like in street words or just in common vernacular, like Francis is straight pussy, like he doesn't want to fight Jon Jones because he's a fucking pussy. And that was Dana White's way of saying that, which, I can get with that a little bit. I think Francis's thing is more so just like he values himself way higher than I think anybody else does. And sure, as a fan, he's entertaining and he's fun to watch, and he's an interesting variable because as everybody says, he has that nuclear option to just knock somebody out. But I don't think that anybody is bigger than the UFC at this point in time, except for maybe a few big names, right? Like you have your Conor McGregors, who fans will follow them if they go anywhere. But I don't think Francis is there yet, and that's because of a lack of activity on Francis's part. If he really wanted to be that guy that people are going to follow to, say, the PFL, then he should have fought more than 2 times over the past 2 years. So he's not that guy, pal. And I don't think at this point he's ever going to be that guy. Will he make his money in the PFL? Absolutely, especially with the acquisition they made of Jake Paul, or the signing of Jake Paul, so to speak. And now like they have that deal that fighters are going to make 50% of the pay-per-view. But what's 50% of nothing?
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the other thing too. Anytime that PFL or Bellator tries to put on pay-per-views, nothing happens. And I know pay-per-view numbers are down basically across the board, especially for the UFC, but I think that's more with the cost of the pay-per-view than the actual product is being put out. PFL pay-per-views, I think I saw were like $25, $30, and they still can't sell them. I want to try something real quick, Keith. I'm going to add our screen here, and I want to see if this will come through.
We offered Francis a deal that would have made him the highest paid heavyweight in the history of the company, more than Lesnar, more than anybody. And he turned the deal down. I think Francis is in a place right now where he doesn't want to take a lot of risk. Feels like he's in a good position where he could fight lesser opponents and make more money. So we're gonna let him do that. We're gonna release him from his contract. We're gonna give up our right to match, and he can go wherever he wants and do whatever he wants.
Yeah, they did. That was cool. They did wait until Jon Jones was ready to go, though, too, which makes me laugh a little bit. It's like, okay, we're getting rid of our one marquee star because there's another even bigger marquee star coming in. Because how long did it take for them to release Francis Ngannou? This was basically like 2 years, 2.5 years, right? That
I heard 350 dinners with Hunter Campbell.
Yeah, that was the number thrown out there, right? And over 2 years, what is that?
How is that possible? I'm sorry. 365 days in a year. That's 730 days. You had 350 dinners over 700. That's one every other day.
Yeah, that's like 2 dinners a week at least. You know, like
I think it's more. It's literally like 350 is just under half.
Another day, actually. Yeah, what the fuck?
45. There's no way it was 350 dinners.
Hunter Campbell with Francis Ngannou at dinner more than like anybody else in Francis's circle. I guess Francis married. I mean, he wasn't married to Hunter Campbell at this point.
That's what I was gonna say. If I didn't know any better, I would say those two are freaking dating.
Yeah.
And bro, can you imagine how much money they spent? I mean, it's whatever in the grand scheme of things, right? We're probably talking like a couple tens of thousands, maybe $100,000. It's nothing over the course of 2 years for the UFC, but Francis is fucking over 300 pounds. He can eat, and they're not going anywhere less than 5 stars. They're not going to Chili's down the street. They're not getting Chipotle. Like 350 dinners at Ruth's Chris level or above. Bro, that bill is nothing. That's Francis's signing bonus right there. How about that? All this free 5-star meals.
Yeah, but that's also, you mentioned the fact that he's over 300 pounds right now. That's another reason why I'm okay with
injury.
Well, he looks very out of shape. Like when you see him on, like social media posts and interviews and stuff, he doesn't look like, he's even close to being able to step into an octagon at this point. And yeah, it's because of his injury, but I just don't see him training. Like, not that I'm watching Francis Ngannou like it's the Truman Show or anything, but I just don't see that from him. Like, even guys that are way out of a fight, they'll post videos of them like doing fucking matches. Like Gilbert Burns could be 6 months out of a fight, and he's posting a video of him doing medicine ball slams at Kill Cliff MMA. And Francis Ngannou trains with Eric Nixick, who's super rigorous and has all of his guys in there all year round. And he hasn't posted a single thing about, and he just looks out of shape for a UFC fighter. So, I think even if they did keep him around, it would be a very long time before he's back and ready to fight somebody. Oh, okay. Well, I stand corrected, I guess.
I mean, but listen, he looks big.
Yeah, he normally rocks a 6-pack, and
yeah, you could tell that listen, I'm in no area to talk here. And I'm sure that those kicks are hurting Eric Nixick right there. But, considering what we're used to see, look, kicks are coming back slowly. Looks to what we're seeing, we're used to seeing Francis Ngannou be this like crazy force. And he's not the physical specimen ab-wise or body fat-wise that we're used to seeing. But this is a guy who's, like you said, 2 years off, coming off a knee surgery. I'm not like shitting on him or anything. But it's a fact that he's not in fighting shape, and he probably wouldn't have been ready for March. And Jon Jones wanted to fight in December, and when they couldn't get the deal done with Francis, and he couldn't be ready for March, and he wants boxing, that no one's going to get boxing anymore, and they're already offering him the most money, as the UFC considers the most money they've ever offered any heavyweight ever. I can understand why the deal didn't get done.
Yeah, and the boxing is a big part for sure because you have the PFL who's doing the whole Jake Paul thing now, and if he does go there, Jake Paul has like a boxing fight and an MMA fight in his contract, so like it's like a 2-fight contract or something.
Mm-hmm.
So Francis is probably going to sign a similar deal with them, and then they'll probably sideline Usyk for
Francis to fight Tyson.
Yeah, which it's an easy W, but it just still doesn't hold the same weight though, because now this is a non-UFC Francis Ngannou who will not be holding a heavyweight belt anymore. Will probably just go right into that boxing fight, out of practice, untrained. I won't be buying that pay-per-view because while they'll try and sell it the same way that they did with McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, it won't be the same.
Right.
It's unfortunate because this should have happened if it was going to happen, the whole boxing deal. It should have happened a year ago, year and a half ago, but now it's just too far too late.
Yeah, that's kind of sometimes how boxing goes, that the fights that you want to happen either don't happen or happen far too late.
Right.
And also, I don't know if you saw it, but I forget what branch of the government just sees crack streams. So in terms of buying pay-per-views, if you use crack streams, thoughts and prayers. T's and P's out to
there. Hit me in my Twitter DMs if you want to find out another really good streaming site. Because crack streams was never the move, and it was always blank. Hit me in my Twitter DMs. Give me a follow. If you're not following and subscribe, then I'm not going to send it to you. But it works 100% of the time.
Is it? Well, hopefully you didn't just jinx it. But is it the one that we're usually talking about, that we're usually using?
Yeah, for the most part. That usually works, right?
Yeah, I've had relatively no issues. I mean, it's like on a 15 to 20-second delay, but I mean that's worth not paying $80.
Yeah,
for me.
I have started buying them though. Unfortunately, I turned into a shill and bought.
Keith's making money. That must mean Keith's making money if he can afford to buy these $8 pay-per-views.
Listen, I won't deny that. But yeah, so I started buying. Like, if it's a pay-per-view I want to see, I'll buy it. If I work some nights, if I know I'm going to be home for it, then, or if I'm having people over, especially, I'll buy the pay-per-view. And I actually gave in.
Yeah. If I'm having people over, I don't want to be, finessing with the computer or whatever. Like I'll just buy that. If you have like 4 people over, everybody throw in $10. Like, right. I'm the one who's going to care most about it anyway. So I don't mind paying $40 for pay-per-view and then get, everybody's, what's the word? Supplement me with,
what's funny though is like a night, like, so last night, I'm hanging out trying to watch the card and I forgot I had ESPN Plus and I had my streaming site open on my Prime stick on my TV. And I'm like, Imavov versus Strickland. Let me throw that on. And I'm like, wait, I have fucking ESPN Plus. I'm not watching it on here.
Yeah. Listen, I heard, I think it was Booger Beard was talking about how they're going to cancel their UFC Plus subscription because it's buggy and it crashes, this and that.
Yeah.
Mine didn't crash. Actually, mine did the opposite of crashing. I tried to turn it off at the end watching Dan Ige talk to Juliana Pena. And Juliana Pena, let me tell you, she asks some of the stupidest questions, and they're so long form. She repeats them 6 times, and then continues to ask them. Like, she asked Sean Strickland, like, "Oh, Sean, like, how do you feel about getting towards?" He had just finished saying, like, "I'm here to fight for money. I lost to Alex. He is the champion. I'm probably not going to get a title shot anytime soon. So I'm here to show up and make money. That's why I came here today. I'll fight my entire corner if the UFC at the same time, if the UFC offers me the right amount of money." Like, that's what he said. She goes, "So about getting to the belt, it's like, where are you coming from with these questions?" I cannot stand Juliana Pena talking, but you know who I like a lot? Michael Chiesa is really growing on me. He has some really good, insightful questions. Nevertheless, they're talking to Dan Ige. I'm tired. It's like 11:15. I'm ready to go to bed. I'm trying to turn it off. The thing won't turn off. So I've had the opposite problem. Like, people saying, like, "Oh, there's crashes." I literally cannot turn mine off. A little side note.
They held you hostage last night, it sounds like.
Seriously. But speaking of pay-per-views, we're here to talk about a pay-per-view, UFC 283. We got Glover Teixeira taking on Jamahal Hill. That's going to be great. We got the first Quagdiriligy of all time, Deiveson Figueiredo taking on Brandon Moreno, a new Brandon Moreno, a Brandon Moreno that is going to be for the first time training with Saif Saud. And not Out of Glory MMA and Fitness. He went on Ariel Helwani earlier this week to talk about how as soon as it was coming out, I think he was called and James Krause called him and he immediately made the switch to Safe, which Safe Saud just won what do you call it? Gym of the Year. I'm losing it today. They just won Gym of the Year. But speaking of, before we get into that real quick, I want to just talk about Eric Nicksick and give it up to him. I mean, he went 3 fights back to back yesterday, won all 3 of them. You got to look out for Extreme Couture and Extreme Couture fighters. I think your guy is over there now. Italian Stallion.
Oh, Vittori. Yeah, he trains.
Yeah, Marvin. Yeah, those two, you could tell that they just show up every day and they don't drill, they just fight.
Yeah, no, that's like a murder gym. Like, guys just show up there. Sean Strickland was talking last night about how like Phil Hawes showed up, and he was like, I mean, listen, if you haven't seen the clip, go watch it. Basically about how he wanted to, like, I don't even want to say it. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you haven't seen it, look up Sean Strickland talking about sparring with Phil Hawes. It's bananas. It's crazy.
Sean Strickland absolutely has no filter. He is on ESPN Plus talking to Michael Chiesa and Juliana Pena about, he's like, people see me laughing at the press conferences. I only laugh to look down because I have homicidal thoughts in my head. I'm the kind of guy at my core who I want to cut your head off with a chainsaw. So I have to go and laugh to myself to stop these homicidal thoughts. And then Juliana Pena's like, are you okay? He goes, yeah, no, I'm depressed at my core. I'm a depressed motherfucker. And everyone's like, okay. And they're like, Sean.
I'm waiting for Sigma Male, like TikTok and Twitter, to pick up on Sean Strickland, because I don't know if you're familiar with like the Sigmas on there, but it's all like Robert De Niro from Taxi Driver and fucking Christian Bale in American Psycho saying out of pocket wild shit, and it's memes of them. If my camera was working, I'd do like the Christian Bale face that he always does in those videos. But I'm waiting for like Sigma Male TikTok to pick up on Sean Strickland, because once they get a hold of that guy and they find like the clips that they can cut of him, it's gonna be fucking hilarious. Like,
it was literally last night. Like, he said all of that, and Juliana's like, Sean, we're actually worried about you. He goes, don't be worried about me. Be worried for other people.
Juliana Pena is the only person worried about him. Again, he's just like, there's like a lot of dudes out there that are very similar mindset of Sean Strickland, but we're lucky that Sean Strickland is a cage fighter and not a guy that, wants to
works at Denny's and is plotting something.
Right. Plotting something, or goes to your local bar and finds like people that are incapacitated and fucks them up, or, plotting something.
I think it's good for the world and society that Sean Strickland is known and kind of a celebrity or celebrity adjacent, to maybe quell him from going out and doing things that he maybe would do if he was relatively unknown. Either way, he's an entertaining fighter. He's entertaining to watch talk. And
he's also fights like generic looking, though. Like, if there was ever a police sketch of him, that could look like billions of people. It's like a white dude.
White dude, scruffy beard, basically bald.
Yeah, there's no distinctive features whatsoever. So, like, if he really does do something and somebody spots him doing something nefarious, you better hope they're a UFC fan so they could say, yo, that was Sean Strickland. Otherwise, they're just going to have a guy, like a police sketch of a guy that looks like an Aryan brother. And, that'll be it. Nobody will ever catch him. He'll just be like, oh, no, that was like 90% of the world's population above 35.
I was going to look up his Instagram, and I remember that he has been banned a couple of times. So can't pull that up. I was going to look and see if he had cauliflower ear. I don't think he does, or at least it's not too bad. So that's not even like something distinguishing that someone could call him out on.
I don't think he has any tattoos. He's just like the most generic dude out there. Like, he's the starting screen for your creative character in like a Tony Hawk game.
Yeah, exactly. If the only thing that was preset is that his craziness was fucking off the charts.
Yeah. I mean, you could find a billion of him in a trailer park in Alabama.
Don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. Listen, last night was really good. I really enjoyed the fights last night.
Yeah, like that knockout of Damon Jackson. That was cool. Looked like Damon Jackson tore both of his ACLs when he went down.
When he fell down backwards. Yeah, dude, that was a slick knockout. Good for Dan Ige with the short left hook, like the 6-inch hook, as Damon was dropping his hand. As you could tell, like I think Damon Jackson is a solid fighter, but I don't think he's rank worthy. And I think his most recent knockout of Pat Sabatini was great, but I think if they ran that back, and it's not like Pat Sabatini is a top 15 guy. He's on his way, but and he's good and he's got good grappling, but doesn't have the best stand up. So listen, I think that was probably a product of a Damon Jackson great performance and a bad Pat Sabatini performance that Damon Jackson used to elevate, get the Dan Ige, and then kind of lost a lot of the emotion and the drive because he was just coming off an emotional. I think there was a passing of someone very close to him. So, I think all the emotions kind of maybe ramped him up. Just wasn't his night out there. And Dan Ige looked on fire. I mean, everything was hitting for him. Sticking the jab out there, chasing Damon Jackson around the ring. Damon Jackson always had his back to the cage. Rarely a positive moment for Damon in that fight. So I don't think he'll look back on that too fondly. But the one thing I do want to mention, Umar Nurmagomedov, without Khabib in his corner for I think the first time professionally, comes in there, lands a nice left body kick onto Raoni Barcelos, and then follows it up shortly with the left check or the left hook that got him right on the chin, put Raoni out cold. Umar runs over, gives him the hammer fist to make sure he's out. His head bounces off the canvas, and then Umar catches it and he cradles it and he just puts it down ever so slightly. It was almost romantic.
Yeah. Listen, I got to be honest though. Maybe I will become like a fucking PFL fan because I'm getting sick of all these Dagestanis just coming up.
I'm not. See, here's the thing about Umar Nurmagomedov. Yes, he's got the great wrestling that comes out of Dagestan, and he's got that crazy power. I don't mean punching power. I mean power of like getting people to the ground, getting the takedowns. He is a weight bully, as a lot of the Dagestanis are, but he's got a fantastic question mark kick, and he's so what's the word where you are really, really accurate? I guess accurate. I think it starts with a D, but he's just he's so fluid with his kicks and that they just kind of flow. And it's great because when you think about it, he throws a lot of teep kicks, a lot of head kicks, a lot of not spinning, but a lot of long roundhouse style kicks that can keep people away from him. And if they get in close, well, then he's just going to grab a leg and then he's going to take you down and then you're in his world. So I think that style of fighter, a really dynamic kicker, like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson-esque almost on the feet. And then you have a grab. That's your prototype fighter. And then, I know he said after the fight, he goes, Raoni didn't see that left hook coming, and that's why it knocked him out. I still don't believe I have knockout power. That's kind of what I want to see. If he gets overconfident that he has knockout power, then you may see some issues elsewhere. But if he's like, yeah, I still don't think I have knockout power, if he's underestimating himself, I think he's going to go in there and tear people up. I'm really excited for Umar Nurmagomedov.
That I can appreciate, but, I just don't speak Russian, and I'm tired of, translate.
Yeah, but Khabib's like, listen, all you guys, you have to learn English. And Umar's Russian is coming along. Go back and watch his post-fight interview with Paul Felder. I mean, he's very respectful too. I do like it. He's like, Raoni's a great guy. I knocked him out, but this and that. Like, I really liked the character of Umar Nurmagomedov. I could get behind him. I think I'm a little bored of like the Islam style, but I think Umar brings something extra to the table. Islam has a little bit of boxing and the grappling, and it's boring, and he's going to lay on you, and he's going to pound you out. Ooh,
yeah, it's more
pause. But if you start adding in dynamic striking, and then you also have that power game, that grappling game, now I'm interested. I mean, that Raoni Barcelos fight last night, it was purely striking and dynamic striking at that. So I could really get into them. With that being said, also Sean Strickland, it was great for him to return to form. He really feels that he got slighted against Jared Cannonier last month. I think it was a very, 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 very close fight. I'm not mad if it got put to either guy ultimately, because I think Jared Cannonier is landing the harder shots and Sean Strickland is landing more volume. It's ultimately comes down to damage. Hard to say. But we saw Sean Strickland come out and be a lot more aggressive this fight. And we saw Nasruddin Imavov, who's normally fighting Sean Strickland. And we see everybody outside of Jared Cannonier, really, because I think Sean Strickland was a little bit too timid following the knockout from Potan Pereira. But we've seen Sean Strickland come out there, and he basically, against everyone, makes them fight his fight, and he's better at fighting that fight because he's used to it. It's his style. He does it all the time. And Nasruddin Imavov had nothing for him, even when he tried to grapple him. And we saw Sean Strickland use some grappling. He got 2 or 3 takedowns in there just to switch it up. He was landing a really good jab. He had a 1-2, as we always see from him. Sometimes a left hook. When he gets a little wild, he doesn't land as much. He tries to throw maybe power punches, which isn't something that's, a developed skill set of his. But, being to have that pressure, and Sean Strickland rarely takes a step back. If it does, it's 1 step back. Nasruddin Imavov was trying to pressure him and move forward, and they ended up just being tied up. And at 205 pounds, even though he didn't look like the stronger guy, he was still able to muster Imavov over to the fence, move him across the fence a lot of times. Now, Imavov was getting tired, certainly. But taking this fight on 3 days' notice after having Christmas and New Year's, eating cookies, and only getting back in the gym relatively about a week or so ago, Sean Strickland showed a great gas tank.
He was headed on vacation. He was scheduled to go.
He's still heading on vacation. He's snowboarding right now, I bet.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, for a guy that, like, when you're going on vacation, maybe you're working out because you want, like, your abs and whatnot. You're going to be showing on the beach. But
no, he's going snowboarding, man. Yeah, he's.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's a snow vacation. Like, he's just looking to hang out and, do what I'm doing, drink some Irish coffees in a ski lounge somewhere. Not that I'm in a ski lounge, but so he's looking to hang out, but he's the real deal. And we don't want, and he doesn't want, Sean Strickland that's a 5-round point fighter. We want, and he needs for his career, Sean Strickland that's going to go out there and beat the shit out of somebody and at least look to do some damage over time. Great quote from him after the fight, talking about Imavov, the way he looked at me at the press conference. If a guy ever looked at me like that in the street, I'd kill him and then I'd kill his whole family. I look forward to seeing more Sean Strickland. I think he wanted to engage in a lot of those 5-round fights where he just point strikes guys, and I think he knows that's not really a recipe for success in the UFC. Like even the guys that do have 5-round fights and win by decision majority of the time, they're still going out there looking for blood. And the guys that go out there just looking to point strike with somebody for 5 rounds, they're not really the most successful guys. So Sean Strickland, because you have to be looking for the finish. Obviously, don't spend your gas tank in the way that like a Michael Chandler type of guy does, but go out there looking for a finish. And the only guy that I would say is successful as a 5-round point fighter is Colby Covington, really, and he's 1-2 in his last 3. So but regardless, we should dive into this card. It's been like a half hour, so before we start, just want to remind everybody, please like this video if you like it. Go like our other stuff too. You can see my picks personally weren't perfect this past week the way that they have been. Ending 2022, I had some pretty great picks. Not a great way to start out 2023, but go like those videos anyway. I guarantee I'm going to go better this week. Subscribe too. This really helps us out if you subscribe to our videos. And
we've been getting a couple, like 3 to 5 subscribers a week. I think we're up to somewhere around like the 225, 226 range. I think we finished around 217 in December. So we appreciate everyone who's subscribing and liking the videos. At a certain point, we had 4 or 5 viewers on this video right here, live viewers with us. So go ahead, drop us a like, give us a comment. We will respond. We want to hear what your thoughts are on Jon Jones, on this upcoming UFC 283. UFC Vegas 67, 63, whatever it is. I still have a gripe with the UFC and their naming. Tell us what you think about Dana White. Let's make this a discussion, guys.
Yeah, and check us out on Spotify as well. Check out our Twitters, our personal Twitters, @_Pickin Winners. That's where you can check out all the content we do. Right now, football is in full swing, in playoff mode. Personal pick for today, I'm ripping the Giants money line. I like that. That's a good dog. Even better, I had last night, and I'm rolling with the same bet today. Chargers to win the first half, Jaguars to win the full game. Jaguars came back from that 27-point deficit, 130. Today I'm rolling plus 800 with Vikings to win the first half, Giants to win the full game. That's also plus 800. They won't give you that over there on Pickin 6. That's my pick, but check out what they got for that slate today. All right. So, yeah, definitely leave some stuff in the chat. I want to talk with some people outside of Tom. Me and Tom are talking, but I want some chats, some comments in the chat. All right, we're going to kick it off as we always do with our prelim notables, prelim locks.
Here we go.
That's cool. I gotta get used to that still. Opening up the main card, I'm rolling with Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez over Bruno Ferreira. Gregory Rodriguez, he's got that dog in him. I don't think this fight's going to stay that far down, on the card, but he's a minus 330 favorite. This guy, he's powerful. He's strong. He walks guys down. He's willing to throw. He takes a lot of damage. Or when he does take a lot of damage, doesn't really seem to phase him. He's been fighting some pretty good competition lately. He's on a nice 4-1 out of his last 5 in the UFC, out of his only 5 in the UFC. I think he's a really good acquisition for the UFC. He's got great boxing skills, all around really entertaining fighter. Even though he's at minus 330, I think if you go for a double chance bet here by either a KO or decision for Gregory Rodriguez, you're going to be sitting in a pretty good standing. He's got a massive size advantage, 6'3" over 5'10", just in height, but reach. Well, Tapology doesn't have reach available for Bruno Ferreira, which is a little weird. Was this guy have like little T-Rex arms and his camp didn't want to release that? Not available. That's strange.
At 5'10", I can't imagine he has a reach over what's normal, like your height and your weight, or no, your weight. What am I talking about? Your height in inches is generally what your average wingspan is. So if he's 5'10", that's 12 times 5 is 60. Plus he's 5'10", so he's got 70.
This is an easy lock. I think this is an easy lock for Gregory Rodriguez.
Yeah, they're bringing a guy in here in Bruno Ferreira, which, hey, listen, Bruno Ferreira, and you see what Tapology thinks about this fight that was just made recently. But listen, Bruno Ferreira is not a scrub. When you look at his last 5, he's got a knockout over a 10-1 guy on the Contender Series. He's got a knockout over a 10-3 guy, 33-18. He's fighting experienced guys, 11-5, 3-1. He's 9-0. He's got a good chin. He's got strong punches. He's got power. But the problem for Bruno Ferreira is it's his UFC debut, and we know guys do not do well in their UFC debuts. Typically, it's a large step up in competition, not just record. And number 2, he's going against a guy in Gregory Rodriguez who has an unreal chin. I mean, we all saw the disgusting cut in between his head, right in this general area. If you could see my mouse, that basically revealed an artery that was still blue. And if it had cut him, he may have bled out in the cage, is what they were saying. So not to be too graphic, but this is a guy who absolutely doesn't care, moves forward, and they call him RoboCop, and I'm starting to get it now. I'm not sure if this is why they gave him the name, but he just plots forward methodically, doesn't care, and is willing to take that damage. He's like a robot. So Gregory Rodriguez, I think he's also called Brazilian Obama, which I definitely can see that as well. I like RoboCop a lot. And looking at his one loss here, I mean, versus Armen Petrosyan in a split decision where it went back and forth and Armen wasn't able to get the takedowns that he's normally used to getting as easily. I think Gregory Rodriguez is going to be a top guy in the division, only less than 31 years old. So in his prime here, long reach, big guy for the division. I'm excited for RoboCop.
Yeah, I think if you were going to call any fight this week a super lock for us, I think that this would be like as close as you get to a super lock.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Again, I think it's going to be a really good fight. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's necessarily going to be one-sided, but I think it's definitely going to be a good fight, and I think it's going to be won by Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop. I don't know if he's going to finish Bruno Ferreira. It wouldn't surprise me. I don't know how I feel about placing my money there against a guy who hasn't shown chin issues in the past. It is his UFC debut. I would take the money line here. I don't know what's at minus 330.
I would personally go with Gregory Rodriguez by decision because that he can stand in the pocket with pretty much anybody in that division and swing, take damage, but really you say like take one to give two. I mean, you take like a little bit when you're Gregory Rodriguez to give a lot. Because maybe he's taking like 2 shots from a guy that doesn't really hurt him and he gives one back. He's so strong that one will hurt him more than he got hurt. He's just a dog. Like he's fucking strong.
And in his last 5, he only has 2 decisions to Armen Petrosyan and Dushko Todorovic. And Dushko's not a slouch himself. Finishing Jun Park, finishing Julian Marquez, the Cuban Missile Crisis, who has the famous fumbling of Miley Cyrus. knocked out Chidi Nojukani from ground and pound. So I'm a little bit of a safe better here, especially because I've been really good with picking the winners, but the method of victory is where I seem to falter. So just to try and correct the ship here and take incremental wins as they come, I'm going with Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez by money line, or for the money line, just to cover my bases at minus 330. You can lay $15 on it, get 4 or 5 back. And it's all about chipping away and taking a little bit piece by piece. I'm not in it for, the home run, the Hail Mary, the 80-yard bombs, although they're great. I'll give me a single. I'm approaching this like Moneyball.
Yeah, I feel you. I don't know. I don't know if that's like the general, since sports betting has been legalized, I don't think that's like the general direction that most people take it in. So I'm going to give you the little bit riskier bet. And I'm going to go Gregory Rodriguez by decision. Like you said, he's facing a guy with no chin issues as of yet. And I don't know. I think Gregory Rodriguez has he has the ability to dish it out. But, if you're a guy that has never been knocked out before, maybe it's because you have good head movement, and you'll still take a few shots here and there, but or good defense, and you won't get completely finished. So,
I mean, you could also do Gregory Rodriguez by KO decision, no bet.
Yeah, that's I like the if you use FanDuel, I like the double chance bets that they have there. So that's what I started off with too. But being that he's not I don't know how many submissions he has on his record. I can't imagine it's a lot. So basically, I don't think he has any. So basically, like what they
do, subs, zero professional subs.
Yeah, what they do with those double chance bets is like if a guy's not a submission guy, then those double chance bets typically have the same odds as his straight up money line. So I'm gonna roll with Gregory Rodriguez. Like that's my pick. Like when we do our pick rundown, but Gregory Rodriguez by decision, I think is a very intelligent bet this week. So that's what I'll personally be staking money on. Me, I'm not a minus 330. Put 330 to win 100. That because if that doesn't hit, now you're out 330 for what really wasn't a great gain. I'd rather go a little bit more in with a good pick and
Hey, listen, I hear you. There's a reason why people like the long ball. They like the obviously the home run. They like the exciting plays, dude. And it makes sense. You get a lot more of a rush from winning a fight or winning a bet that's gonna pocket you hundreds of dollars. But for me personally, in the way that it's been going for me, if I can pinpoint who's gonna win and I can do that with relative consistency, and I'm not betting a ton, but I'm incrementally making money back, that's going to be my approach for 2023 until it starts to steer me wrong, which, hey, could be next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever works for you. That's what's awesome about sports gambling being legalized now at this point is, there's so many different routes and options you can take. Like the bets I was talking about before with football, like betting on who's going to win the first half and the second half. Like, it's outside of the norm with the spreads and everything else, but that's what we're here for, is just to give options. So, but we're both on the same page with Gregory Rodriguez. So that Gregory Rodriguez money line, that'll also be like a leg in a parlay for me this week too. All right.
Moving on with continue with our prelim notables. There's one that I want to mention really quickly, and that's Thiago Moises taking on Mezquilil Costa. Mezquilil Costa is a shoot the box guy, but he's not from the main shoot the box. He's from shoot the box Jose Emilio or Yao Emilio. So not the main one. He's from the same camp as Joe Anderson Brito. Other than that, there's not a ton. I'm not seeing any other UFC level guys there, and he's taking on Thiago Alves, who is going to be slightly shorter and a slight reach disadvantage, but when you look at the level of competition that Thiago Moises has fought, it doesn't even compare. Yeah, he got submitted by Islam Makhachev, and he lost by TKO to Joel Alvarez. But we're talking about really strong UFC level competition. He got the submission over Chris Giagos just 5 months ago. Alexander Hernandez, he's got a win over unanimous decision. And listen, he also got a unanimous decision win over Bobby Green. So he's got the hands and he's got the strong ground game to be able to get it done. I like him a lot against Mizaquil Costa, coming from a lesser gym. Has some solid opponents for sure and has some knockout power in his hands. But I just think the level of competition is going to be too much. Make his UFC debut at 26 years old. Going against a guy like Thiago Moises, I don't like it for Costa. So I'm going to be putting money on Thiago Moises, though I don't know what the odds are right now. Tapology doesn't have them. I'll try and look it up and report back, but he's definitely a guy I'm going to be looking into as well. And then one more for you, and we'll go back to you for your last one because I think we know who it's going to be, but I want to go with Jailton Almeida over Shamil Abdurakhimov. And the reason for this is because Jailton Almeida is a freaking beast. He can go out there and he can throw. He has good leg kicks. He has strong hands, but he's also got an amazing pressuring, grappling style where he's going to get you down. He's going to get on your back. Now, against a guy like Shamil Abdurakhimov, that's not going to be necessarily as easy, but I don't think he's going to have too much of a difficult time. Shamil is 41 years old. He's Russian, so he's naturally going to have a decently strong grappling base, but Jailton Almeida is minus 1,000, making this basically a no bet. But I like him as a lock, minus 1,000. Hard to do something with, but Jailton Almeida, maybe two other guys in a parlay. Doesn't do much for it, but I think this is going to be another example of Jailton Almeida going out there and making the rest of the division and making people look silly. And I'm actually very interested to see Jailton Almeida if he gets a couple more wins, a couple more qualifying wins. Like again, they've been to guys like Anton Turkalaj, Parker Porter, Danilo Marquez, Nasruddin, whatever. Not quite the level of competition that you would like to see to be able to get up into the top echelon and start challenging. But with a strong grappling base, which is a little bit different from the typical heavyweight that's just really out there to knock you out. You really got him and like Curtis Blades and a couple others that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head that are strong grapplers. Jon Jones. I would love to see those guys rise to the top, be the cream, get to the top there, and create this kind of new generation of heavyweights after having such a layoff with Francis Ngannou. So that's what I'm definitely looking forward to this weekend.
Yeah, I like that pick quite a bit. My next one is going to be Terrence T-Rex McKinney versus Ismail Bonfim. And again, you touched on a lot of points when you were talking about Gregory Rodriguez about how guys making their UFC debut in 2022, they really trended down. I don't know if we had anybody making their debut last night, so that may not be a stat that we can really track. But
we had, last night, I know off the top of my head, we had Dan Argueta, who was not making his debut. In his debut, he lost to Damon Jackson. He fought I forget the guy's name. It was Argueta and something else that was very similar, starts with an A, but just kind of went in there and showed him that, if you're making your UFC debut, you have to be something really, really special to go in there and get the win. You also had Javid Basharat taking on a guy from Real Shoot the Box, blue hair. And Javid Basharat went and got the win, and in his post-fight was saying how, hey, listen, this guy's a really good guy. I was banking on him getting tired. He never got tired, or he got a little tired, but he never gassed out in the way that I was expecting. He had a really amazing chin. That if you haven't watched that Javid Basharat fight, I suggest you go back and watch it, and also watch his post-fight post-fight interview with Paul Felder. Really, really interesting. But I think last night there was two people, maybe more, but at least two people making their UFC debut that both got handed L's.
Well. So the trend continues. So that further reinforces my Terrence McKinney pick. T-Rex, he's really not a guy that you want to make a UFC debut against. This guy last year went up against a couple of serious, really just great competition. Fought Drew Dober in an absolute crazy fight, and I think that's his only UFC loss so far. Farzayam, Matt Fribola, Eric Gonzalez. He can do it all. Wins fights by submission, wins fights with crazy knockouts. He's got serious power in his hands. He's willing to back you down against the cage and just throw and throw and throw and throw until you catch him. And then even if you catch him, he's still going to keep throwing. And he, he really means business, and he's super entertaining. I hope his next fight after this is against a little guy named Paddy Pimblett. I would like to see that fight a lot, but for the time being, Terrence McKinney's taking a little road trip out to Brazil, and I think he gets it done on the road. He's got a really great line, which is, I thought maybe Terrence McKinney originally when I was looking at this fight would be a slightly heavier favorite, which leads me to believe maybe there's something here that Vegas knows about Bonfim, but I still like Terrence McKinney here, and I think at -120 the value is super high. So I'm willing to take Terrence McKinney straight up here.
Just looking really quickly at Ismail Bonfim, is who's making his debut here against Terrence McKinney. He has 3 losses on his record. The 2 of them came regionally in his first 2 fights, and then the third was against Money Moicano.
Oh wow!
Moicano wants money, which I can't wait to see him fight. But back in 2014, what was that?
On Jungle Fight 71.
Jungle Fight 71. He lost by rear naked choke in the first round back in 2014. So it's almost been 10 years since he lost.
Yeah.
So,
but ever since then, it looks like the majority of his wins recently, at least, are. I mean, you have 3 out of the last 5 coming from decisions. So, and I think against a guy like Terrence McKinney, if you want to beat Terrence McKinney, it's like kill or be killed. That's the type of fight that it is. You can't go out there with any reservations whatsoever. You have to literally be willing to destroy T-Rex in front of you. And, I just don't really see that from I think that Terrence McKinney, the ceiling is the roof, to quote Michael Jordan. And, I just see Bonfim as another stepping stone, just another guy. He's another face. Making his debut, keeping that trend going with debuts losing. So I'm going to roll with Terrence McKinney. I'd imagine you're going to side with me there too.
Yeah, I'm going to take Terrence McKinney, but I'm definitely concerned about that. I wouldn't be adding him necessarily to a parlay at -120. I think you're getting enough of a return that you don't need to, combine that. And, you could put 2 units on him. But, hey, listen, I think this is probably his hardest fight outside of the Drew Dober fight. Because, and as we saw with Drew Dober, when he throws. If you're not able to get that guy out of there, Terrence McKinney gets tired, and as anybody would with that, crazy pace. Throwing with that exceptional power, if he can't get him out of there in the first round, I think the fight gets very, very interesting. I think you could get, a Terrence McKinney. You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, something just kind of dawned on me. I think this is actually going to be a Terrence McKinney fight that ends up going to decision. I think he's going to definitely win the first round. And then we'll see how it goes from there. I think it's going to be really interesting. I'm still going to bet on him because I think there's more ways for him to get it done. But, the guy he's going up against, he's got some submissions on his record. He's got knockouts on his record. He's got decision wins on his record. He's got good cardio, got a good gym, and he's been in there with guys like Renato Moicano, and he's been doing this for over 10 years. So definitely an interesting fight. And being that it's his UFC debut, it makes it a little bit iffy, but this is not a typical guy making his UFC debut. He's got an extensive career and some really good history. So I think that's going to be a fantastic fight, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I just before we dive into the main card, I just threw down a bet on the spot, and I'm going to see how I feel about it, basically in 2 months, but Jon Jones at +100 against Cyril Gane at -120. I just threw, a nice little chunk of change at Jon Jones at +100.
I think Jon Jones finishes that fight too. I think by the second round, he has Cyril Gane on the ground, and I think he's just landing mega elbows from a clinch or a side control position until Herb Dean steps in there.
Yeah, well, if you've got a book that's allowing it now, I would definitely snag that now because I think public money is just going to start flooding in on Jon Jones.
It's Jon Jones.
I view that as almost an investment now at this point because even if fight night comes around and you don't feel like Jon Jones is going to win, you got to look at what that cash out value is going to be now with if you snag him at +100 and he moves to -200. The cash out value is going to go up like crazy, at least in most cases. Also, Cyril Gane at -120 is not even a bad bet either. So, but, plus money, Jon Jones for, I believe, the first time in his entire UFC career crazy stuff. All right, let's move on to the main card now.
Real quick though, Shogun Hua is fighting in what is being labeled his last fight ever, and I think fighters are like 0 and however many times this has happened in their final fights when going into it, knowing that it's going to be their final fight. You think of Cowboy Cerrone, you think of plenty of guys. Shogun Hua has not had great performances as of late. You know, he's gotten knocked out by Paul Craig. He basically tapped out to strikes there 2 years ago, took a year and a half off, lost on split decisions to OSP, who's not at the prime of his career either. And ER Potera is coming in here. He's got the loss to Nikolai Negomariano, but I don't think Mauricio Shogun Hua at this point, 41 years old, is going to be knocking him out. You know, he's got a decent ground game, and, you know, he's got some finishes on his record as well. The people on Tapology really like Potera, and a lot of Ukrainian fighters have been doing well as of late. He's younger, entering his prime, basically the same reach, a little bit of the bigger guy. Shogun Hua's got 1 foot out the door, and Potera is getting his UFC debut. I think this is actually, well, not his UFC debut. Even better, it's not his UFC debut. He won on the Contender Series, lost his debut, and he's probably going to win this, being 2-1 when you include Contender Series. A lot of fighters have done that, so I feel really good about taking Potera. Not good about getting against Shogun Hua, who naturally is a pioneer of the sport, but ultimately we're on a show to make money and not necessarily to make good feelings. So I'm going to be taking Potera here.
His last fight was fucking trash. That was so garbage. Oh my God.
I think that was probably supposed to be the retirement fight, and it was so bad that he was like, give me another chance. And, you know, I think something happened there where, like, you know, the UFC's like, all right, like, well, this has to be your last fight because we're not sending you out ceremoniously if there's, you know, another example as bad as that OSP fight.
Are you talking guys that know it's their last fight in the UFC or guys that know it's their last fight, period, career-wise, retirement over?
Well, I'm talking retirement over.
Okay.
I think UFC, when they're fighting maybe for a contract extension, that you know, adds some more variables into the equation here. Yeah. But when you're talking about guys who know it's going to be their last fight, Frankie Edgar, they just don't perform well. And I think that's because when you have 1 foot out the door in retirement and you're like, oh, this is the last time I'm going around, like, I just don't, I don't think they have the dedication. And I'm not saying that negatively, but I think it's like a mental barrier that you're not going to be able to put in the amount of effort and the camp needed when you have retirement on the brain. And like, after this, I'm done. Like, I just think there's something to it. And most of these guys obviously are end of their career, have taken a ton of damage up into that point. You know, it's not like you're seeing a guy who's 32 years old being like, hey, like, I made some money. I'm hanging it up after this, still in the prime. So I think all of that matters. And unfortunately, I think Shogun Hua is going to go out unceremoniously.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, let's dive into that main card now. We're getting up there in time at this point.
Here we go.
All right, to open the main card, we got Gil Burns versus Neil Magny. But maybe this would be higher considering Gilbert Burns gave us, like, basically, in my opinion, fight of the year last year. You know, Gilbert Burns against Hamzat, in case you didn't know. But the lines are a bit extreme for this one, too, in my opinion. Minus 410 for Gilbert Burns. Whew. Yeah, he's not a high-value bet. But I do think he has the edge in most areas. I think he's got the power. I think he's got, you know, just he's not like the more accurate striker. But when he lands hard. You know, I mean, you just went over Neil Magny's record, his past 5 fights. Sure, he has, you know, a submission victory in there. But Gilbert Burns is naturally just a way better Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter outside of the fact that he's from Brazil. You know, when he fought Kamaru Usman for the belt, you know, during the pandemic, Kamaru was scared to go to the ground with Gilbert Burns. Absolutely refused, wanted him to come back to his feet. So, you know, I mean, I think it's almost obvious in this one. This is Gilbert Burns' fight. And maybe a bit of a reward too, right? Like it'll still be entertaining unless Gilbert does what he did against Wonder Boy when he just, you know, laid on top of him. All right, yeah, highlight the size difference. It is a major size difference.
And I just want to point out that Hamzat Chimaev is 6'1" with a 76-inch reach. So an extra 2 inches of height and an extra 4 inches of reach here for Neil Magny. But Neil Magny is doesn't have the bulk that Hamzat Chimaev has.
He doesn't have half the skills that Hamzat has either.
That's very true. But he does have a long arms and limbs to use that teep kick, to use that jab that he does use effectively to keep Gil Burns at range. I don't think we're going to see Gil Burns go in there and take him down because, listen, Neil Magny does have some decent jiu-jitsu, and we saw that against, an exhausted Dan Rodriguez, able to go in there and get that Darce choke that I think Dan ended up tapping like very close to the end of the round. So, Daniel Rodriguez, obviously not the best grappler, and Neil Magny was able to finish him with those long arms. I don't see Neil Magny submitting Gilbert Burns. Of course not. And I really actually don't think Gilbert Burns is going to submit Neil Magny. That's not his style. He may try to take him down and land a bunch of punches in the clinch against the fence, same way he did to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I think that's probably how this is going to go. I think fight goes the distance is your best bet. I think Gil Burns probably is going to win, but it's going to be difficult for him to get in there. He lands a lot of the close shots. He likes to land his right hand. He likes to land some hooks. He likes to get in close. And I think he's going to have a harder time against Neil Magny getting in close than he had against Khamzat Chimaev, who's going to throw wildly. And if you could evade the first one, you can get in there with an uppercut. So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I do want to side with Gil Burns and definitely by decision. But hey, listen.
I think Khamzat uses his range a lot better. At least, sure, he's like wrestled in the majority of his fights. But I think that he showed in that Gilbert Burns fight, I think he uses his range better than Neil Magny because he throws from distance and then he closes the distance very fast and gets in where he's strong. And Gilbert Burns, if he can get on the outside and close the distance, then, this is very easily his fight, I think. I think he's just maybe they're trying to capitalize on the hype with Gilbert Burns, too, in the past couple of fights, making him minus 410. But I think if you roll with Gilbert Burns by decision, you're in a very safe spot. And with the length that Neil Magny has, if Gilbert Burns gets into his guard or just gets on top of him in general, Neil Magny's not going to be able to, put his legs under Gil Burns' hips and kick and push himself out of there. So the second that Gilbert Burns gets top control in this fight, it's his fight. Like it's over, at least for that round. So I just don't really see like a path to victory for Neil Magny the way that I do with Gilbert Burns. I see Gilbert Burns being able to close the distance, land heavy shots. Yeah, sure, he's gonna have to swing up at a guy that's 6'3", but
I sense a lot of body work happening here, especially Neil Magny is a guy who will use that range occasionally, but also push you up against the fence and like to win in that clinch style position. I saw Neil Magny doing kind of to Daniel Rodriguez what we saw Gil Burns do to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So I think they have a very similar style in that regard. Gil Burns being the stockier guy, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be the stronger guy, but I think he's going to have more finesse when it comes to jiu-jitsu and maybe in the clinch positions. I don't think he's going to get taken advantage of the way that Dan Rodriguez got taken advantage of by Neil Magny in the clinch. So I think, everything, as close as it may be and how much the scales may tip because of the reach and the size advantage here, I think the jiu-jitsu and the grappling advantage for Gil Burns kind of tips them even. I would say this is a very safe fight to bet going the distance. You like Gil Burns in it, like you said. But listen, I got to tell you, I would not sleep on Neil Magny. I don't think he's going to win the fight, but I think he makes this a very entertaining one. Yeah,
it'll definitely be entertaining. They know Gilbert Burns. Like he's a guy that, if they give him someone that, can be entertaining against, he's going to make it entertaining, I guess. But regardless, I don't see a world in which Neil Magny beats Gilbert Burns. He's not going to be able to catch him, I don't think. Maybe he uses that length and he does slip something on Gilbert Burns. That's the only way that I see him winning this one. Outside of that, Gilbert Burns is just so much better in so many different areas, I think. Right. And like to the point of, Gilbert Burns not being taken advantage of the way that Daniel Rodriguez is. Daniel Rodriguez is a great boxer. There's no denying that, but he has no ground game whatsoever. So Gilbert Burns is super intelligent on the ground. I mean, Khamzat didn't want to go to the ground with Gilbert Burns. He's so intelligent on the ground. I think Gilbert Burns is going to take Neil Magny down in the beginning of each round and just stay on top of him and land a lot of shots. I can't see any other – I don't know if this fight's really going to spend that much time on the feet. But, it's Gilbert Burns. Maybe he'll want to make it entertaining. All right.
It's true. He does have a lot of entertaining fights. Moving up to the card. Speaking of entertaining fights, Lauren Murphy.
Yeah. Did we skip around a little bit? I think we missed Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. Unless you have that later on your slate.
Yeah, I have that one next.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy. I'm just going to peep the odds for this one real quick. Minus 460 Jessica Andrade. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, Lauren.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, but this other one, Jessica Andrade has fought some of the best competition that the UFC has to offer for, the smaller women's divisions. She's done great things against them. And I think this is going to be another case where she just gets on top of Lauren Murphy, abuses her, lands heavy elbows, and then eventually locks up a submission. You'd think maybe there has to be like a major upset on this card at some point. But, you look at the UK cards, right? The UK cards, they've set up absolute layups for their fight for the British and, UK, Welsh, whatever fighters over the past couple of cards. And that's what they're clearly doing with Brazil outside of like the main event. And then, the fight that I mentioned before, Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. I think outside of that, a lot of these fights are very clear layups. They're building stars, or bringing stars back to Brazil and reminding the Brazilian people, like, these are, your guys. Like, here's who to rally behind. This is another one of those fights. Lauren Murphy has a good history, but and she's fought for the belt before, but she sucked in that fight for the belt. Andrew Schultz famously called her a diner waitress. And then you have Jessica Andrade locking up standing arm triangle chokes. So, it's vastly different between these two women. Jessica Andrade, like I said, she could bring her to the ground. I think you could also see her just walking down Lauren Murphy and knocking her out on her feet very early in this fight. Minus 460, it sucks. But unlike most women's fights that we bet on, I don't think you take this one by decision. I actually think you take Jessica Andrade to finish this fight.
And the other interesting thing that I want to point out here is this fight is happening at 125 pounds. And if you're watching, if you're on Spotify, we post the video on Spotify. So if you're watching on Spotify, or you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, you maybe didn't see this, but as Keith was doing his breakdown, I was going through and I was looking through Jessica Andrade and looking at her history. She fights at 115 and she fights at 25. Her losses most recently is to Valentina Shevchenko at 25. So that's going to be the best and the brightest here. But her other losses to Rose Namajunas at 115. And, when Jessica Andrade can get down to 115, I think she looks great. But it also depends on how that weight cut goes. Getting a little bit older now, that's probably getting harder for her. And she's just a very brolic woman. You could see here in her picture. She's got great shoulders, biceps, triceps. She's very strong. So I think she's probably going to have a weight advantage here over Lauren Murphy. Definitely a muscle advantage. Lauren Murphy is 39 years old. Hasn't looked great. She got the win over Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate hasn't looked great. She came back, got a win over a 40-year-old fighter, and that's really the last we're probably going to hear from her. I think Miesha Tate's wife, or is Miesha Tate lesbian? I think she had her wife or someone fighting yesterday. Actually, I could be getting that confused. What was that?
Miesha Tate's a lesbian?
I don't know. Don't take my word for that. I've made a ton of mistakes on this video already. So don't take my word as my bond.
That's news to me.
Don't take my word as bond here. But that being said, or I guess not being said, she got the loss against Miesha Tate, which doesn't inspire a lot of confidence if you're Lauren Lucky Murphy. I guess that's why she's called Lucky. And then, she's got the loss of Valentina Shevchenko, where she looks absolutely terrible in. She's got the win over Joanne Calderwood, who I guess that's all right. We're looking at a year and a half ago. Lilia Shakarova, not in the UFC anymore. And then Roxanne Modafferi, not in the UFC anymore 2.5 years ago. I think Lauren Murphy just isn't going to have anything for Jessica Andrade. If she tries to get in there and stand and fight with her, the 6-inch reach advantage that she's going to have, I don't think is ultimately going to benefit her all that much because of the power coming back. And ultimately, if Jessica Andrade is going to be able to get in there in order to land some uppercuts and some power shots and get past that reach of Lauren Murphy, she's also going to be able to take her down. She's going to have that physical strength. And she's probably, almost definitely, is going to have the technical acumen to be able to get it done wherever she wants. So, minus 460, it's a little heavy coming back, but Jessica Andrade to win inside the distance, I think is a fight that is a bet that I would feel comfortable putting my money on.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about Jessica Andrade. So I'm rolling with her here this week. All right, next up. Well, what do you got next on your slate?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Paul Craig, Johnny Walker.
All right, I'm rolling with Paul Craig, and I mean, listen, Paul Craig, best jiu-jitsu, I think, outside of maybe Charles Oliveira, in the UFC at least. He's the type of guy, he's going to get hit. He can lay on his back, wait for you in his full guard. Johnny Walker is really stupid, I think. If you look at his face, he looks really stupid. He looks like
you look at his knockouts.
Yeah, and like this was, Johnny Walker was like if you watch Game of Thrones, he was like the prince that was promised for a while there. Like he was this guy that was supposed to come in and beat Jon Jones, and he's really fallen off big time, as most of those guys have. The Dominic Reyes's and Anthony Smiths of the world. These guys have really fallen off. But, I think Paul Craig, even though he's going to upset I think he's going to be the only upset maybe on the main card over a Brazilian. Like I was talking about how these cards are set up for Brazilians to win. Paul Craig is going to do it with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I think Johnny Walker maybe knocks him down, and Paul Craig waits for him on the ground, and then Johnny Walker follows him down there like a stupid, dumb idiot. And Johnny Walker gets locked up in something where he gets his arm. I think you see Paul Craig winning by, I think, a leg triangle choke, and puts Johnny Walker to sleep because Johnny Walker's too stupid to tap. So
I think Paul Craig's going to end up like getting like something elegant, like a Gogo Plata or something on Johnny Walker, because Johnny Walker is just not going to see it coming because he's too kind of caught up in his own thing. It's going to be interesting, especially considering Johnny Walker is coming off a submission win over Jan Cutelaba in a rear naked choke. That might be his first submission win. I'm not positive. Let's check it out.
Yeah, but Jan Cutelaba is also like he's another fucking moron that just walks guys down, like gets hit, like. And Johnny Walker, he starts off fights like really, really fast. So I think, yeah, he lands something on Paul Craig. Paul Craig baits him in. It might not even hurt Paul Craig, and he just does like the Charles Oliveira method, which is working out really well for a lot of these like super great jiu-jitsu players. And, I think Paul Craig he baits Johnny Walker in, and Johnny Walker gets snatched up.
I hear you. I couldn't disagree. I think Johnny Walker, like you said, is going to bait forward. And maybe he's going to be a little bit more tempered. But again, he's fighting out of SBG Ireland. So I think he wants to strike. And I think no matter – Paul Craig is so crafty, he's going to get on the ground somehow. And because Paul Craig is so good at pulling guard, like you just have to get close to Paul Craig, and he'll grab something on you some weird way. And it's going to end up on the ground. And then I'm really scared if I'm Johnny Walker. And if I'm Johnny, I may be a little extra concerned, or if I'm a fan of Johnny, or if I want him to win, I'm invested in Johnny Walker winning. I may be a little concerned for him coming off that submission win over Jan Cutelaba. Maybe he thinks he has a little bit more of a jiu-jitsu or a grappling prowess, and he actually has. And he's willing to entertain this ground game with Paul Craig, who is a guy who, like, you don't want to be on the ground with Paul Craig. He had his last loss against Volkan Ozdemir, but Volkan Ozdemir was very intelligent and able to not be on the ground with him, stay striking, and that wasn't the best version of Paul Craig that we've ever seen either. So I hope that we can come in here and have a much better version of Paul Craig. He is aging a little bit, and against a 30-year-old Johnny Walker is really had trials and tribulations throughout his career. 6'6", 82-inch reach here. I think Paul Craig is just going to do what Paul Craig does, get in there and get the win. Very divided on Tapology. 51% are actually on Walker to get the knockout. He knocked out Jamahal Hill, or he got knocked out by Jamahal Hill. Well, I want to look back and see his last knockout was over Ryan Spad, which actually has aged pretty well if Johnny Walker's own performances hasn't hindered what that would have done for him. He hasn't looked great either, getting knocked out in very odd fashion. So I'm going to give Johnny Walker probably the advantage on the feet, although Paul Craig is not a slouch there. It's just obvious where these two fighters' strengths are. Grappler submission versus a bit of like an odd striker. I'm going to take Paul Craig in here. He's got the experience.
Don't forget intelligence level. Like, I think Paul
Craig, fight IQ is a big port. Yeah, big port.
I think, like, if you gave these two guys a fucking standardized test, that Paul Craig would get, he would outscore Johnny Walker by a lot of points. I think Johnny Walker, if you gave him the SAT, he'd score a 7.
All right, boys. Before you fight, I know you're cutting weight, but we need you to take this SAT.
Yeah, he just strikes me as a fucking moron, though. Like, and maybe he's a really intelligent guy, but I don't see it. And Paul Craig, very well spoken, very intelligent in the octagon. So intelligent that he was willing to leave his career behind at maybe a year ago, because he knows. I mean, now he has a chance at the belt, but like a year ago or so, he was like, I'm just fighting, and I'm just getting beat up. I'm getting my brains beat in. Like, that's an intelligent thing to do, and a lot of guys stick around too long. But I do think now, actually, in the year 2023, Paul Craig has he's in legitimate title contention at this point, where if he gets this win and then maybe they boost him up to another big name after this, he does have a bit of a claim to the belt, or at least a fight to the belt at some point. So the ceiling is very high for Paul Craig as well in this year. So speaking of who's got a claim to the belt, you've got Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno fighting for the 4th time for the flyweight championship belt, and I've got Brandon Moreno in this one. It's tough. Definitely a coin flip. We wouldn't be running it, or they wouldn't be running it back for a 4th time if it wasn't super tight.
Right.
But I just think Brandon Moreno is going to get it done. To what you were speaking about before, I think he went to James Krause for like his fight against Kai Kara-France, and that may have been it, that he trained with James Krause, and now he's with where did you say he is now? He's with Saif
Saud.
Yeah. So I think moving around gyms a lot in that way for a guy like Brandon Moreno that's already so well-rounded can definitely help him a lot, because you have your little tidbits of skills and information and knowledge that you pick up along the way. It's like anybody could relate that was like took sports seriously as a kid. You have, like, say you play baseball, and then you have a baseball clinic at Frozen Ropes, and they teach you how to eye up a curveball better. And then you go to this place and they're like, oh, well, here's how you sink your elbow into your stance, and that helps you swing better. And it's just like tidbits of information. I think that's going to be huge for Brandon Moreno. But the Kai Kara-France fight was very telling for me. Just how he ended that fight with the liver kick, that was devastating. And against a guy like Kai Kara-France, who trains at City Kickboxing, he's one of my personal favorite fighters, and someone that I thought had the opportunity to interrupt like this weird title circuit that they have going between Brandon Moreno and Figueiredo. Because if Kai Kara-France would have won, then he would have been fighting Deiveson Figueiredo in this fight in Brazil. But so that was a shock to me. And that's probably what stands out the most, because I think the Kai Kara-France is very legitimate. I think a couple of more steps of improvement, and he's up there. He's right up there with these guys. But so I'm gonna have to roll with Brandon Moreno. I think he's so well-rounded. His wrestling's great, his striking's great, and he's clearly putting it all together. And if he wins it in this one, I don't know how they could feasibly have these guys automatically go back for a 5th fight. Like, it's got to be, at this point, it's got to be loser goes home, right? Like, just end this shit already. Like, loser has to go to fucking Bellator.
Well, no, I think what's going to happen is, listen, if you look at the 3rd fight, and not to cut you off, Keith,
right.
If you look at the 3rd fight, Brandon Moreno was winning the fight except for the knockdowns, and that's what ended up scoring a lot of the rounds for Deiveson Figueiredo. When you consider that if those knockdowns didn't happen, Brandon Moreno would have won that fight. I want to start initially I was thinking like maybe switching those gyms from Glory MMA to Fortis MMA. Maybe that would be a negative for Brandon Moreno, but I think, like what you were saying, like moving around to a bunch of different gyms, especially he's only 29 years old. So it's not like he's changing gyms at the end of his career, and it maybe is going to be something crazy. And he's also moving to Fortis MMA. Saif Saud, he got just awarded for the 2022 Gym of the Year, Coach of the Year. So like, I think he's potentially elevating. I think he's been there for a little bit now, so it wouldn't necessarily impact the fight camp too much. And, you know, at 35 years old and with the amount of muscle that Deiveson Figueiredo has on his body, to continue to keep making that cut over and over and over again, especially, I think he's coming off of an injury as well. So he's had more time out. Like his last fight was 10 months ago against Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno fought and beat Kai Kara France, like you were saying, proving that he really deserves to be there. So listen, I think it's obviously very, very close. But I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno, the assassin baby. In a few months, he's probably going to have to get a new nickname. He's 29 years old. I don't think you could be 30 calling yourself a baby, although Wonder Boy Thompson is still a boy. I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno. I don't know if he's going to finish Deiveson Figueiredo here. You know, when he did finish him, that was because Deiveson Figueiredo infamously had that the stomach bug or food poisoning, was in the hospital. I'm not sure if that happened or if that's confirmed or not. But at the end of the day, I think if both guys are healthy and at their best, I like Brandon Moreno's chances a little bit better. He's younger, he's longer. And with Deiveson Figueiredo aging and with the amount of muscle he carries on him, that weight cut is going to, you know, impact him more and more and more over time, to where the amount of times these guys fight, it just leans ever so slightly in the Brandon Moreno side for me. So I'm going to go with Brandon Moreno here. It's close, but I think the youth and potentially Saif Saud on his side is going to elevate him to at least putting a draw to this trilogy. Well, I guess if you have a draw in there already, Brandon Moreno comes out the winner.
Yeah, it's like technically a super lock, right? This is a tight fight, and it'll be something I take straight. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think Brandon Moreno. I think it's better for the UFC if Brandon Moreno wins this fight. Like whoever's writing the script out there, I think that it fares far better for the UFC to have a guy who I think is going to spend a lot more time in the UFC, you know, holding that belt or at least in title contention. If he loses it, whatever. But like I think he's going to be tenured a lot longer. All right, main event: Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal Hill. This is really something, you know. It was supposed to be Yuri Prochazka, and Yuri screamed so hard his shoulder fell off or something.
No.
He punched a tree, and
the tree punched back.
Yeah, the tree put him in an armbar and took his shoulder out or something. But anyways, no, I mean, for real though, like heard it in training, and then the story coming from Dana White, in case you're not well versed in the lore behind this. Yuri Prochazka was training, popped out his shoulder. Somebody in his gym popped it back in.
Allegedly, the worst shoulder injury the UFC has ever seen.
Well, I think, I think it probably got worse after it got popped back in because, listen, you know, if you are good at anything, right? I have a physical blue collar job. If I get fucking hurt at work, I'm not gonna have somebody pop my shit back in because they could mess me up more, and now I'm out of work for an undisclosed amount of time. And I'm a little bit shocked, surprised that Yuri Prochazka did not have the same mentality. It seems like a little bit common sense. Now, could that be Dana White just fabricating something? You know, it could have been the doctors at the PI. Who knows that like did this to him? I could see that as well, but I think it's more likely, you know, Yuri was training in the woods somewhere. Some shaman tried to spit dust on his shoulder and pop it back in, and that's why he's out for so long now. It's going to be at least a year, right?
Yeah, got into a fight with a wolf.
Yeah. So, he probably went to a witch doctor to heal his shoulder, and that's why it fucked up. I could see him doing that. But either way, I'm rolling with
He probably just tried to heal it by, fighting with it and assumed that the mixed martial arts gods would take care of him.
Yeah, probably. He does believe in, the way of the samurai and everything.
Yeah.
For life. That probably says, stick a sword in it, and it'll feel better. If you have no arm, how could your arm hurt? But anyways, I'm rolling with Glover here. Glover at plus 105 to get the win in Brazil. It's probably a huge moment for him. To fight for the belt in Brazil at 43 years old. I still believe in Glover though. I think that fight against Yuri the last time around, while both these guys were winded. He made a lot of mistakes, like when he had Yuri up against the fence, knocked basically, out on his feet, and he tried to pull guard to a guillotine, against Yuri. I don't think that you see him make a lot of those same mistakes again. I don't think you see him leave his chin out there. While he is 43 years old, he still improves a lot with a lot of his fights. Jamahal Hill is young. He doesn't really have like a crazy amount of UFC experience. He does have some great knockouts, but like I don't think he has it in him yet. I think that Jamahal Hill is a guy that you'll see in the future. I think that this is like an opportunistic thing from the UFC, where they looked at Jamahal Hill and said, all right, he's available. Let's throw him in, because who else would it have been really? Like, he was signed to fight Anthony Smith, which I think he would have won easily, but Glover Teixeira, I think, is a whole other challenge. And Glover brings a lot more to the table. I think you have a wise old Glover that's still he's still very talented. So, I'm going to roll with Glover. I think that this is really, like, with Yuri Prochazka being out, I think this is really Glover's belt to win, and I think that may the stars have aligned for, with the Magomed Ankalaev fight and, Jan Blachowicz, that ending in a draw, so Glover can reclaim his belt. That may be the case. Maybe this is just like the universe saying this is Glover's belt. Maybe I sound like corny for saying that, but at plus 105, that's good underdog money. I'll roll with Glover any day. I'm willing to take him.
61% of Tapology is also rolling with you. Here is my thing about this fight. So let's talk about what each guy is good at. Glover is good at getting hit and not going down and being able to recover and then forcing that knockdown or whatever happened into a scramble, which ultimately ends up with him on the ground and implementing his game plan of elbows, punches, submission attempts, active ground game from the top, pressure. That's what Glover wants to do. And he did it well against Yuri Prochazka. He did it well against Jan Blachowicz. Keep in mind, he submitted Jan Blachowicz inside of like the first or the second round. Yuri Prochazka, he was about to win that fight until he tapped with like 15 seconds left in the fifth round. Thiago Santos, he submitted. Anthony Smith, he knocked out straight. And I think that was the fight where Anthony Smith was handing his teeth to the referee. And a split decision over Nikita Krylov. Like you said, he has been getting better over this stretch. And then I look at Jamahal Hill's last 5 fights. He's got the win over Thiago Santos in the fourth round. For a guy, all right, let me just continue with this. In like the fourth round, after a back and forth war there, he was winning a lot of it, and he was getting very confident. Thiago Santos isn't the Thiago Santos that we remember fighting a very close match with Jon Jones. A lot of Jon Jones references today. Johnny Walker, he got the knockout of. I'm not sure how much that's saying. We've seen chin issues with Johnny Walker over and over and over again.
That shit was also ridiculous.
That was a fight. He's got the right hook win over Jimmy Crute. Lost to Paul Craig, another grappler, which I think is not in. Listen, at that fight, yeah, he snapped his bicep. But at the end of the day, he did get pulled into a guard and was on the ground. So, I think that's not insignificant either. And then you have, obviously the win against a very old OSP. What Jamahal Hill wants to do is he wants to go in there. He wants to throw haymakers and he wants to get you out quickly. His style is not very technical. It's unorthodox and it's looping punches. It's some straight punches, but it's punches with power. And that's ultimately what Jamahal Hill wants to do. Against a guy like Glover Teixeira, I think it's the exact wrong stylistic matchup for him, or I guess it's a bad stylistic matchup for Jamahal Hill. Glover Teixeira, up until this point, we've seen him take a lot of damage from a lot of really heavy hitters, especially in the first and second round. Jamahal Hill wasn't able to get Thiago Santos out of there until the fourth round, and that was a bit of stamina that kind of creeped in, some lack of gas tank from Thiago Santos, obviously aging a little bit, being in wars. And Thiago Santos wasn't totally out, but hey, listen, fair to Jamahal Hill. I'm not putting an asterisk on that win at all. All I'm saying is the power level in order to that takes him 3+ rounds to get out of Thiago Santos, to get him out of there. The ability for Glover Teixeira to be able to take a shot, I'm just concerned. And I think with Jamahal Hill, we haven't seen a ton of grappling, but we saw Paul Craig get him to the ground and ultimately have his way on the ground with him. He snapped his bicep. I'm not sure if that causes an injury or if that's more or less like a submission by Paul Craig, because he was wrenching on that arm, right? And Jamahal Hill maybe didn't have the wherewithal to take his arm out of there because of the pressure that could go on there. So maybe that's speaking to a bit his ground game. Ultimately, if Glover Teixeira is able to stand and bang in there with the likes of Yuri Prochazka, I'm not as concerned with him against the number 7 ranked Jamahal Hill. Now, he is 43 years old, but he got to remember, he's training with Poatan Pajeda, probably one of the scariest punchers inside of the UFC, and they're making each other better. So at this point, I feel confident in a 43-year-old. It's only a 3-inch reach advantage. He's been against, heavy punchers in the past, probably far more technical and experienced than Jamahal Hill. So at this point, I think what's going to happen is Jamahal Hill's going to try and rush in there. Maybe he'll be reserved, and maybe he'll try and be more technical. But with what I've seen from Jamahal Hill, especially on Twitter, where he's getting into Twitter wars, multiple Twitter wars a day with people who don't matter, to the point where he actually basically going to be like, all right, I'm going to stop responding to people because this isn't good for my mentals, or whatever he said. I'm not liking the dedication there. I think he maybe is a little bit overconfident going against a 43-year-old guy. Maybe that's just confidence in his game plan, and maybe that's going to be good for him.
People fuck up against Glover, too.
And people fuck up against Glover. They end up, no matter what, getting into, what's up, Men of War? How you guys doing? They end up fighting Glover Teixeira's fight, just like I was saying earlier in the show here, that they end up fighting Sean Strickland's fight. So I think somehow Jamahal Hill, they're going to have a back and forth. Somehow it's going to end up maybe in the middle of the round on the ground, and we're going to see Glover just kind of take control there. And I ultimately think Glover's going to get this one by finish, probably in the third round. I'll give Jamahal Hill benefit of the doubt that he's able to get out of that and be able to survive the first round, probably land some good punch. He's going to land really good shots every round, and I think Glover's just going to be able to survive, get knocked down, grab an arm, grab a leg, grab the waist, grab the back, grab something, get it to the ground, and ultimately impose his will. I don't think Jamahal Hill's got the ground game to be able to contend with a guy like Glover Teixeira. And you got to remember, a lot of people don't know this, but before he was in the UFC, when he couldn't get a visa to come over to the USA, Glover Teixeira was the Brazilian boogeyman. And everyone knew UFC is where like 99% of the best fighters are. But there's this guy, Glover, out in Brazil that is mauling people. So he's always kind of been the boogeyman. And at 43 years old, it's kind of only adding to his mystique, trading with an amazing striker like Alex Pajeda. And Glover's just such a nice guy. He's always smiling. It's hard to root against him. I'm all for Glover here. I don't not like Jamahal. I think Jamahal Hill's fun, but there's levels to this game.
Yeah, that is a big part of it too, is the Alex Pajeda striking partner. That's big. All right, well, listen, we're coming up on an hour and a half, so I think we should roll into our pick rundown and call this episode, for the day.
Here we go. Pick rundown.
All right. Prelim locks. I am rolling with Gregory Rodriguez, excuse me, over Bruno Ferreira, and that fight's already moved up the card. When we started the episode on Tapology, it had it opening the card. Now it's
oh, I hadn't even noticed that.
Yeah, it's just 2 fights out from the main event now. It's just behind Shogun Hua.
Prelim co-main, as they may say.
As they say, yeah. So then I'm taking Terrence McKinney also over Ismail Bonfim. I'm taking Paul Craig over Johnny Walker to be the only non-Brazilian on the main card to win. Good upset. I'm taking Jessica Andrade over Lauren Murphy, Gilbert Burns over Neil Magny. I'm taking, actually another non-Brazilian.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, I'm taking Brandon Moreno, the Mexican, over Deiveson Figueiredo, the Brazilian. And I'm taking Glover Teixeira over Jamahal Hill. Brandon Moreno isn't really considered an upset, considering it's minus 110 across the board.
Pick 'em.
Yeah, but, still non-Brazilian. Hit us with yours, Tom.
I am going with I didn't realize that they updated this on Tapology, so let me find my spot here. I'm going with Jailton Almeida over Shamil Abdurakhimov, and I am going with Thiago Moises over Mezquilil Costa. I like both of those two. You could probably parlay those. And then Gregory Rodriguez over Bruno Ferreira. I would keep that one out of the parlay just because of the experience of Bruno Ferreira, but I think Gregory Rodriguez is going to get it done. And I also go with Iho Portera. Add that to the parlay. Iho Portera, Thiago Moises, Terrence McKinnon. No, that one's too close. I'm not going to add that to the parlay. My parlay is Iho Portera, Greg Rodriguez. Back up. Let me start over. My parlay, Iho Portera, is Thiago Moises and Jailton Almeida. Those are my three. And then other straight picks, I'm going to go with Terrence McKinney, and I'm going to go with Greg Rodriguez. Moving up to the main card, I like Paul Craig over Johnny Walker inside of the distance, probably by sub. I like Jessica Andrade over Lauren Murphy inside of the distance. I like Gil Burns over Neil Magny by points. I like Brandon Moreno over Deiveson Figueiredo, money line, and I'm going to take Glover Teixeira over Jamahal Hill inside the distance because he can get it done by a sub or a TKO. So hopefully that wasn't too confusing. We will begin to post our picks on pickinwinners.org and also probably include them on Men of Order. So make sure you're checking us out on Pickin' Winners. Make sure you are checking us out on Men of Order, and make sure you're listening to us on Spotify. And if you can, if you're listening, I know we've had it's been an hour and 35 minutes. There's been quite a few people that have shuffled through. Leave us a comment. Give us a like and hit that subscribe button. We're up to 227 subscribers here. We started the year somewhere around 220, and this is really only our second video. So we're really appreciating all the love. Our views have been going up. So a lot of good stuff coming, and we're going to try and do more and more for you too. So make sure you smash that like button and submit that subscribe button. How about that?
Yeah, hit that shit.
All right.
Nice.
With that being said,
take it easy. Enjoy your Sunday. Let's go, Giants.
all right.